that there is a tribal ritual, or I should say a tribal statute that the Torah adopts as halacha. Okay? But now take a look. That's what's supposed to happen in the best case. What about the worst case scenario? What if the brother refuses to marry the woman? We're not forcing him to take it. We're saying, you have first priority. You have the first rights to this woman. Well, what if he says, I don't want to do it? Let's say, I'm married. I don't want to marry this woman. Or, I don't like her. We don't get along with each other. She's a brunette. I like blondes, that type of thing. Whatever it is that he says, I don't want to do it. And this is in verse 7. V'im lo yachpotza ish lakachat et yivimto. And what if the man does not want to marry his brother's wife, or his brother's widow? Ve'alta yivimto hasha'ara el hazikenim. Then this woman goes up to the gates of the town, to where the elders sit. And she says, Me'en yivami lahakid la'achiv shem b'Yisrael lo ava yavmi. My husband's brother refuses to establish a name in Israel for his brother. He refuses to perform the levirate duty. Okay? So what happens? The Zikanim, the elders of the city, they then call him to court. V'kar'u lo ziknei ira. And they will call him to court, and inherent from the pasuk, it sounds like they're going to try to change his mind and say you have a duty and so on and so forth, or whatever religious coercion they can use, or tribal coercion, and he still refuses. Ve'amad ve'omar lo chafatzti lakachta. He says, no, I don't want to do it. I refuse to take this woman as my wife. I'm happy the way I am. V'niksha yivimto elav le'nei hazikenim. Then his brother's widow shall approach him in front of the zikenim. V'chaltza na'alo me'al raglo. She will remove his shoe from his foot. V'yarka b'fanav. And then she will spit in his face. Ve'anta va'amra. And then she says, publicly declares, Kacha yeyaseh le'ish asher lo yivneh et beit achiv. This is what is done to a man who will not establish his brother's house. Well, house in the sense of, his brother's dynasty, legacy. Okay? V'nikra shelo b'Yisrael beit halitzah na'al. And he shall be called the head of the unsandaled family. He was on this place. Go to the Book of Ruth.
Next, go to the next.
Go to the Book of Ruth. Okay?
1746.
Is it 1746?
You're already there.
I was already there because I couldn't
You were thinking about it.
Yeah.
Okay. You were thinking about this. All right. 1746 in the Book of Ruth. We have this wonderful story where this woman returns with her mother-in-law, and I'm not even going to get into the issue of conversion, which is another topic that we will discuss, but not right now. I want to get into one specific nuance, one specific story within the story of Ruth. Ruth has kind of cozied up to her mother-in-law's relative.
She's encouraged too, yes.
That she's encouraged to, yes, and obviously she's not completely averse to the idea. And Boaz takes a fancy to her and decides that he'd like to marry her. But of course there's a slight impediment, because Boaz is a distant relative of his mother-in-law, which also makes him a distant relative of Ruth's dead husband. And there's actually somebody else who is more in line or closer in line to the succession who has first dibs on Ruth. I hate to put it that way, but basically that's it. There's another relative who has a closer relationship who, if we're going to say, let us marry Ruth off to somebody so that she can maintain her husband's inheritance, that person would get the first rights. So they have to decide how they're going to proceed. So Boaz devises this ritual, or at least this public ritual, so that nobody will then come along and say, that Boaz overstepped his tribal bounds and took the woman that would by right to somebody else. Okay? So
yeah, but he's already shamed her at that stage, doesn't he?
No, he hasn't. This is not public knowledge yet that they've spent.
Oh, I know about it.
Okay. So since there's no public knowledge, okay. So here we got
Only people in Leeds who knew.
Yeah, there were like maybe like who knew? It was Naomi who knew. It was Ruth who knew. It was Boaz who knew. And we remember that Boaz basically kicked her out early in the morning before people started showing up.
Very careful.
Right? I mean, yeah, he's completely honest. And the text actually says that there was no hanky-panky between them.
But it is relevant.
It's relevant, but only relevant in terms of establishing the relationship, not necessarily in terms of her reputation. Okay, so far, nobody's reputation is being sullied. The Book of Ruth is in effect the reader is the fly on the wall here, but we're let in on the secret that nobody else knows. So Boaz in chapter 4. It says, Boaz Allah hashar. Boaz went up to the gate. Again, the same type of approach. He's going to the gate being the public area where the elders of the town or the village or the city would sit and meet. In effect, it's like standing. I don't know, what would a public place be today? I was going to say Kikar Safra. Kikar Tzion would be the public place, because nobody would go to Kikar Safra. Right?
Nobody wanted it.
But Kikar Tzion would be a public place. Okay, so Boaz goes to the public place, to the Sha'ar, Vayeshev Sham, and he's waiting there. V'hinei ha-goel over asher diber Boaz, and here the goel, the one who is first in line to inherit Machlon's property, is walking by, because when Naomi dies, he's the one who's going to get the inheritance. And he tells his goel, he says, "Come, sit down next to me." And of course, the goel doesn't have a name, which again is very significant, but a subject for another discussion. And he says, "Come, sit next to me." And the two of them sit together. What? Name is Palomi, yeah. And Boaz then calls 10 men. So it's now not just a little tete-a-tete, it's now a big public gathering. 10 men in those days, it's a major public gathering. Miziknei ha'ir. Vayomer shavupo. And he says, I want you all to sit here and I want you to witness this, so that what we do here becomes public knowledge. Vayomer lagoa. And he says to the first in line, Chelkat hasadeh asher la'achinu le'elimelech. This land, which belonged to Elimelech, Naomi's husband, Ruth's father-in-law, okay, we've got to do something about it. It belongs to Naomi, but before I make a decision, I need to consult with you because you're first in line. And I wanted to say, Kinei neged hayoshvim v'neged ziknei ami im tigal yigal v'im lo yigal hagidali. If you want to buy it, it's yours. Okay? Otherwise, let me know, and I will buy it. And I will buy it if you choose not to. And I love this. Vayomer anochi egal. So the guy who's first in line says, sure, I'll do it. No problem. Why should I not want to accumulate more property? I am a member of the tribe. I am, Elimelech's relative. I get first rights. Yes, I will take that property. And Boaz says, fine. That's great.
I see. If he takes Ruth and she has a son, then his sons don't inherit. That's what the problem is.
Well, there are two issues here. Yeah, basically what he said, if he takes it because the brother is dead and he's not the brother, then it'll all be his. But he is required by law to take Ruth.
And then her kids inherit.
And then, exactly. So then Boaz says, now wait a minute. There's a catch to this acquisition, because if you are going to acquire the land beyond kinotcha sadeh biyad na'ami ume'et Ruth hamoaviyah, you're going to be buying it from Naomi and from Ruth, who is the widow of our kinsman. Kanita lehakim shem hamet anachalato. He said, then you will have to marry Ruth, and your child will continue the inheritance in the name of Machlon, her dead husband. And at that point, Ploni Almoni scratches his head, and he says, maybe I'll reconsider this whole idea of taking the field. It's too much baggage. If it were just the field, I wouldn't have to worry about anything else. Fine. Land, I'm always ready to take. Additional baggage and marrying Ruth and having her have children, and the children will be b'shem. That I don't want. Vayomer hagoel lo uchal li'oli penashchit et nachlati. He said, I'm not going to do this. Ga'al lecha ata et geulati. Forget it. I relinquish my rights. It's all yours. Yeah.
He doesn't stand to get the land anyhow, because he's just holding the land until the so-called son
Well, the son hasn't even been
reaches the age
of inheritance.
It's the what do you call it? In English, I suppose he becomes a regent.
He becomes right. Exactly. And he says, I don't want to be a regent. I want it, and I sure as heck don't want to marry Ruth, because I'm not even sure she's Jewish.
But she's beautiful.
Which is inherent in the text. Although nobody mentions it, but it's something that says, I don't want to destroy my inheritance. It's very possible that her Jewishness is not an issue, and maybe I shouldn't have said it, but his basic answer is, I do not want to destroy my inheritance, or as he says, or as it translates in English, lest I impair my own estate. Which apparently indicates that he's concerned about something that may occur, which is not necessarily related to owning the property. Yeah.
Where do these two guys come in? Because they don't seem to be brothers.
They're not. They're relatives.
Yeah, but
I know. Well, this is okay. Now we've got the story in the Torah, which talks about brothers specifically. And then we've got this discussion here,
cousins,
which is not brothers at all. These are people who are relatives, but not necessarily brothers. Hold off on that. Let's go to the next pasuk. This is the line that I wanted to focus on. In verse 7 on page 1747, V'zot lifanim b'Yisrael al ha'geula va'al ha'tmura lekayem kol davar. It was the custom in Israel in these days that when a transaction was completed, one would take off his shoe and hand it over to the other, and this is the way transactions were sealed. When I first read the story of halitzah, I thought, the significance is the shoe. I was like, the significance is not the shoe. The shoe is the tool. The shoe is it's the handshake. It's the whatever you call it. But it's the spitting that's the significant part. Handing shoes back and forth apparently is something that was done on a regular basis. The spitting part is the part that's the insult. Now, the fact that she takes off his shoe, it's basically saying, okay, fine. So you're giving me away, great. Here's the symbol that you're giving me away. I'm taking off the shoe. And then she ends up spitting in his face and says, this is what you get for giving me away. But this chilutz hana'al, well, that's something apparently in Sefer Ruth. Zot lifnim b'Yisrael al ha'geula v'al ha'tumura. This is the way that people would symbolically acknowledge that a transaction took place. Not everybody knew how to write. Certainly not everybody had money. And and if they carried things, they carried them in a pouch and not necessarily a napkin. But they gave away, or they exchanged shoes, or at least they handed a shoe from one person to another, and that created the symbol that a transaction took place. And this is exactly what's happening here. It's a tribal custom. It's a tribal ritual, if you were, that becomes incorporated in the Torah as a halacha. In the Torah, once it's written that you have to take off the guy's shoe in order to acknowledge that he refuses to exercise his levirate duty, then it becomes a necessary component in the process of halitzah. You cannot have halitzah with a ballpoint pen or with a handkerchief. You have to have halitzah with a shoe. That's the statutory requirement, based on what apparently is a tribal custom that if you want to show that the transaction is going to take place, do it this way.